Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode. I got another interview for you guys. I had the honor and privilege to be on this gentleman's podcast a few weeks back. And, as you all know, I'm a big believer in collaboration and creation over competition and comparison. And anyone that invites me on, I always return the favor and invite them on so they can share their story with us. I have my good friend, Leonard on here. He's in the private lending industry, the CEO of his company. And I always like talking to business owners because a lot of you listening are in the entrepreneurial space, you're in the business ownership space, and it's not a one size fits all type thing. Everyone has a different journey that they've gone down to get to where they are. And I know you guys love hearing the stories of what people had to grow through to get to where they are. And that's what Liam and I are going to discuss today. So with all that behind us, Liam, welcome to today's episode.
Thanks, Scott. Super excited to be here and share some insights with the audience.
Yeah. So with that in mind, obviously, we know a little bit of what you're doing now as the CEO of your own private lending company. But what my audience loves hearing first and foremost is, what do you feel was that catalytic moment for you that kind of sent you on that path X amount of years ago in the private lending space to get to where you are today and where you're moving into the future?
Yeah, that's easy. A very defined moment for me. Two things happened. I was in the corporate world. I was moving very, very quickly and in executive roles, and they were moving me all throughout the country, and I was on planes all the time. And my wife asked me two questions, not the same day, thankfully, but number one was essentially, how much longer are you going to do this? Which was basically saying, how much longer are you going to pick the job over me? Was what she was indicating. And then the second is, what kind of father do you want to be? And it was like, what do you mean? What kind of father do I want to be? Of course I want to be a father, and I want to be a good father. And she's like, you're never here. If you're never here, how can you be a good father? If you're on a plane and you're always remote and you're always working, again, going back to, if you can't put family before job, then we need to rethink a lot of things. Going back to the first question, if you can't put me before job, then maybe I'm not the right person for you, right? As really as you read into that. And that gave me a swift kick in the pants to start rethinking priorities and where I was in life, and resigned from the corporate world and moved into being an entrepreneur.
So what's a little bit about the your corporate background that kind of led you into, private lending and becoming an entrepreneur? So, what was the framework or the infrastructure that was built in the time that you were spending as an executive in the corporate world that kind of led you into what you're doing now?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, I've got an econ degree from Yale undergrad, and then I have a master's from UCLA Anderson, where I had a essentially real estate finance concentration. And then in the corporate world, my whole experience and goal was to essentially be the CEO of a multinational company. And so I took a very different path where I went across multiple functions. And so I started in purchasing, then I went into marketing, I did customer care, I did sales, then I did general management. And so it was all geared towards leading a company eventually, right? And when I took a step back and I looked at, the role models that I was trying to emulate of, Fortune 100 CEOs, most of them have either divorced or estranged marriages, estranged from kids, on the plane all the time, right? In the public's eye, job comes first. And that just wasn't something I was willing to do, right? So I had this great pedigree of preparing to be a leader of a large corporation. And those skill sets definitely carried over into kind of the entrepreneurial world. As I was looking at what I wanted to do, there were a couple of things that were important to me. Number one is I wanted it to be relationship driven. I felt that corporate was very fake. I felt it was very political. I didn't feel like, you had each other's back and you were in it with each other side by side, right? If you think of people who are in the military together, it was the complete opposite of that, right? Not my brothers and sisters, right? Not how I would describe them. So I wanted that, right? I wanted it to be part of that relationship was I wanted it to be local. So I wanted to be able to be a big part of the community that I was in and I was serving and be able to help, right? Instead of token charitable contributions, right? Actually knowing the founders of the organizations, being a part of that, being on their boards, serving with time and money. The second was I didn't want it to be a one-to-one relationship with labor, meaning it took me away from any sort of coaching, any sort of training, any sort of consulting, where you're billing hours, right? Think lawyers, right? Et cetera. That just wasn't a model. I knew you'd have to grow an employee base to be successful there. And I wanted something that was kind of scaled outside of that. And so those three things really kind of took me into the space of services, right? My background led me into the finance space. And so financial services and real estate being very relational, very localized, fly under the radar. You don't have to compete with the big guys. Often the big guys come to you and want you to aggregate volume for them. Was a perfect kind of place for the skill set as well as my educational background.
So, you did a lot of different things when you were in corporate, from, purchasing, marketing, customer care, sales. Did you feel a pull towards one over others that you really, again, all of it was stepping stones for learning all the intricacies of running a company. But within all those things that you did within corporate, did one speak more to you than others that you really felt more home?
Definitely marketing and strategy for me. Sales and customer care stretched me more than I'd ever been stretched because I was leading large organizations, right? 100 to 400 people who your sole job is to help make them successful. And you've got mostly entry-level folks, right? And entry-level folks were not people that I was used to interfacing with or having to motivate, right? I was used to sitting around with a bunch of MBAs who wanted to think through big strategic problems, right? And go figure out how to solve them. And you take someone like that and you put them on the ground level with, people who don't have that background and are coming out of high school trying to get a job that can help ends meet with the family. Their motivations are very different, and learning how to identify those, how to lead with purpose and build a culture definitely stretched me, right? That plus having to deal with a lot of the employee issues that you have to deal with entry-level employees was not fun. Great learning for running your own business, but not something I want to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I there's always things that we love to do and things that we don't like to do. My wife loves the tech side of our running our company. It's not an Achilles heel for me. I'll do it if I have to do it, but like you, I'm more of the relationship type person, but I have been in sales my entire life. So I love connecting with people. I love creating sales. I love, presenting and speaking and all that stuff. But it's doing those things that are uncomfortable and stretch you that help you grow, not only as a business professional, but as an individual as well. Going back to something that you talked about earlier, as an entrepreneur, we talk about work-life integration, where, we don't want work and life to be bled into one another. There has to be a significant separation between who we are as a professional and who we are as an individual. And my wife and I have set, very specific boundaries. We only work 3 days a week. We have 4 days off a week. And that's the way that we like it, because we want to spend a better part of our time living and not having to be tied to work. And again, we run a company. We have, 7 or 8 team members behind us. Why do you feel, especially in the corporate side, you were fully embedded in that culture of, work hard, rise to the ranks, make a ton of money, do what you got to do, and then there's your family outside of that, and you were seeing the foundations around these people's lives crumble before them, and again, they didn't bat an eye. They just kept focusing on the money and this, that, or the other. What do you think was the driving force, not only behind why those people, not those people, but, in the high powered culture of, corporate CEOs and CFOs, and comparatively speaking to you, that had that enlightening moment with your wife where, she said, check your priorities. You're spending more time with your job and not enough time with me and our future family. So what do you think it is about that culture where that's almost like socially acceptable in that culture, where obviously it took something like what you went through to kind of turn the mirror around and say, hey, I got this thing all backwards?
It's a great question, and there's so many facets that play into it, right? And I don't think it's just any single corporation in and of itself. I think it's quite frankly, a pandemic in the American culture as a whole, which pushes people to work, right? And I think it pushes people to achieve. It pushes people to put more time or effort in. And the idea is, you work harder, you do more, you take on more, you'll be seen by management, right? And it'll give you opportunities to continue to move up. Essentially, the idea of choice has been removed from most corporate employees, right? They don't feel like they have a choice to not show up to work today. They don't feel like they have a choice to not do something that their boss tells them to do, right? It's all very dictated to them, right? When I was in corporate, I had a sticky note that lived on my monitor, right? And it said, never forget you're replaceable, right? You're just a cog in the wheel. And that's how corporations are built, right? In order to be successful, they need to be able to pull people out and put people in with maximum efficiency, right? To get them up to speed, to be able to perform. And in the corporate environment, it's optimized to a certain deliverable, right, or output per employee. If you have an employee who's delivering more than what that is, right, it gunks up the system because one gear tries to turn faster than the others are willing to or able to, and it slows everything down, right? And similarly, you've got someone who moves too slowly, right, and it does the same thing. So people who fit the entrepreneurial mind are usually on the faster side, right? Where they're making the connections. They want to do things, they want to go improve. And it's like, whoa, slow down. Those priorities don't match what my boss has told me. And those are the only priorities that really matter, because that's how I'm going to get promoted. And so like, whoa, let's back off, right? And so you become kind of a black sheep, a pariah, use your metaphor of choice, of not fitting in well, right? Same for the slow, but the slow obviously makes sense. You've got underperformers that aren't bought in for one reason or another. So the way I combated that, I changed jobs every 9 to 15 months on average. And so I was trying to outrun this idea of being stuck or being forced to conform, right? And so they love someone who goes really fast to get up to speed and start delivering. And then they push back when that person starts to challenge the status quo or the ecosystem, right? So to your question of why the culture is the way it is, right? I think one, you've got this idea that people are cogs in a wheel and they need to perform as dictated by management. And so you've got people who are coming in and doing exactly that, right? I think there's a preconceived notion that you do more or you take on more, or you check every box that's given to you, you'll get a gold star and that will help you move up. And if you move up, you'll get paid more and you'll be in a better spot. And in reality, you just have more work, right? But that's what success is deemed by, from the outside world, right? I think particularly I came from LA. LA is so much, what do you do? Where do you work? What kind of car do you drive? Right. And that's like, if you live there, then that's what you're looking to achieve, right? And so in order to have any sort of self-worth externally, you go and you put too much time and effort, in my opinion, into getting that promotion, having that job title or whatever that is, right? And it's a self-perpetuating kind of cycle.
Do you see, obviously, you kind of put your thumb on it, that it's more or less the American culture of, work hard, make a lot of money, retire, and then die. And life is bigger than that. Do you, A, ever see it changing? And B, what do you think needs to happen to make it change?
It's interesting, right? Because will it ever change? Yeah, potentially, right? But in order for it to change, you've got to have enough people see that there's a better way to do it, right? Or a better way to live or something like that, right? And I think we're still in that progression of advancement as a society, right? It's not long ago that, we had to, prepare our own food, right? Farming was, so critical, right? A lot of these technological advances are new. And so as we move into the service age, right, and the information age and all of those things, I think people are still figuring it out, right? So I think there'll be whatever those next advancements are that are coming, likely driven by technology now that that's here to stay. And you see it a lot with the younger generations and looking for purpose, looking for fulfillment, right? Just going to work to make money and then spend the money on something cool isn't enough for them anymore, right? So I think we're starting to see components of that are coming. But I mean, it's institutionalized, right? Like everything about school and college is all geared towards gaining jobs, but the jobs that they're geared towards gaining are all in corporate functions, right? Like you don't go to school and go get an MBA to go be an entrepreneur, right? Like that doesn't exist, right? It's backwards. No entrepreneur would be like, I'm going to spend a lot of money to go be taught how to be, like it doesn't work, right? So I think systematically there's a lot of things that would need to change along the way. But I think as you have more and more generations that start pushing against the status quo and saying, hey, there's got to be something better, then you start to see change. I don't think you'll ever lose the idea or the there being a corporate something, right? There will always be corporations. Now, they'll have to evolve with the changing demands of the people, right? And what does that look like in terms of, they call it work-life balance today. I think that's a lot of a load of crap, right? But something has to change in the way that the employees engage with said corporation and what that output is and how they define fulfillment in their life, right? And I think you see it in a lot of entrepreneurial companies, and then it's lost on the corporate side. So I think some of those changes will come. On the flip side, there's probably some people who are really happy with black and white and 9 to 5, right? Giving them structure. And that's why it's been so successful, right? Is it's very clear, it's very structured. And so how do you take that structure into the next phase? It's a great question. And excited to see what happens in the world as we get there.
Yeah, as everything evolves, things do change. And, people are talking about more like work-life integration. And I think if our society pays a little bit more attention globally of what's going on, what other countries are doing to facilitate a strong economy, but a life that people, where it feels purposeful, they have time with friends and family, and they get vacation and all of those things where people can enjoy those things. And that's, to your point, that's why you see a lot of the younger generation kind of being nomadic about it. They're, living in RVs, just driving around the country, being a free spirit, doing like entrepreneurial things on the side to, facilitate, the against the status quo and to not go with the norm. So I totally agree with that. And I hope things do change. I'm grateful that, I was taught how to be an entrepreneur from day one. That's all I've done. The only ladder I've ever climbed was my own, and I'm still climbing it. So I've never gotten to the top and never will. The peak of one mountain is the valley of another. So that's the mentality that I have. So what do you feel? Because again, you very successful the corporate side of things, and now obviously very successful on the entrepreneurial business ownership side. What about entrepreneurship that obviously you thought entrepreneurship was from outside looking in, but when you got behind closed doors and you were growing your own company entrepreneurially with the business that you're running, what was something that surprised you or shocked you of what entrepreneurship really was, as opposed to what you thought it was outside looking in?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a couple mentors as I was going through corporate, right? One that I was looking to join his company, and he sat me down and he looks at me, he goes, "I would never hire you." And I'm like, "Why wouldn't you hire me? I'm the best at blah, blah, blah." He's like, "You're not going to be happy until you work for yourself." And I was like, "Oh, whatever." So my dad was an entrepreneur, started his own company, right? And the fear that I always had is I would work 80 to 100 hours as an entrepreneur and, pour it into the business, not know where to stop, and have it be all consuming, which is ironic because I stayed in corporate and I still work those hours, right? But I thought I had more choice in corporate, and it's the opposite, right? In terms of on the entrepreneurial side, choosing how you're going to engage, where you're going to engage, what you prioritize, what you're going to do now, how much you want to take on, how many days a week you want to work, right? All of those things are choices that you can make. And you don't have to go full throttle all the time. You shouldn't go full throttle all the time. There's times and places for it for sure, but you can create a life that's worth living, right? It's not dictated by other people. And that was the most exciting piece once I finally got there, right? The first couple of years, I definitely applied the same corporate mentality to the entrepreneurial journey. And I would have burned myself out, right? Like I would have dug an early grave. I was trading health, right, for wealth or advancement early on. And it wasn't the right way to go about it, right? And obviously a lot of things have changed where I'm more balanced now. I've got, I'm in a better place, right? And I control my life. And I know I control my life, right? I can choose not to show up to work today. I can go do whatever I want, right? And that part is really, really freeing.
How has the narrative between yourself and your wife changed? Obviously now, having a family, that conversation that you had with her years ago, have you guys ever revisited that conversation and how different things are now that you're on the other side of the coin?
We have, and ironically, I quit. And then within 3 months of quitting, she got pregnant, right? And so it was like, oh, okay, let's start this journey much faster than I thought. And so we had obviously the 9 months, and then probably for the first year of my firstborn, I was still laser focused on the business, right? And my talk track was always, you don't need two people for the baby, and why am I going to hold the baby who's just going to sleep on me? That's inefficient. I'm going to go do something else, right? And go put the baby down or go do something. And so I missed a lot of that piece, right? And so she and I since then have had a lot of conversations around what that looks like, and me missing out. And our relationship is so much deeper as a result, right? There's more communication, there's more understanding, there's more love, there's all of those things are there, right? And it doesn't feel like I'm on an island charging up this corporate hill to be a CEO with some of her help, but not really, because we're not as communicative, right? So I think from her end, there's an appreciation, right? The other part that scares me is like, I kind of got there on my own and we forced it, but like so many people, I think, go through life assuming that like, oh, this is just how the relationship's supposed to be. And, I'll grin and bear it and it looks okay. And it's like, no, like, again, you have a choice, like go invest in that relationship and make it healthy so that, your wife or your spouse or significant other, right, they're there to support you. And it's an incredible journey to go on together when you're there together tackling things.
Now being on the other side and having your business, what are you most proud of in regards to the journey that you've been on and the decisions that you had to make? And they weren't always easy, but obviously you have to risk to reap the reward. So what are you most proud of about your journey?
Part I'm most proud of is actually freeing people who work for me from the shackles that I was in for myself, right? And so getting them to this idea of choice, freedom, designing their life, right? Getting them to be much happier, have great relationships with their spouses, right? And the engagement level just goes through the roof, right? Because it's all intertwined and it's so much of the family, right? So for me, it's all about positively impacting, enriching the lives of others, right? And how we do that both with the company, right, as well as borrowers we work with, investors we work with, all of those things is what's most meaningful.
You know, private lending is an interesting profession, and obviously there's some people that know about it, some people don't. So first, you know, give a brief overview of what private lending is, but also what do you feel makes DML Capital different from other, you know, private lending firms that are out there today?
Yeah, so private lending, essentially, we work with high net worth individuals who, invest their capital with us, and then we turn around and we lend the money out to real estate investors. So think of HGTV and all the flip shows, Love It or List It, right? Chip and Joanna Gaines. All of those guys who are going in are essentially lending from people like us. They can't get the financing from the bank that they want with the speed that they want to execute their job. And so they need a private market, and we provide that private market for them, working with investors, right, to be that kind of middleman, so to speak, mitigate the risk, provide consistent returns to the investors. What makes us different? Transparency is a big one. So the reputation of our industry is not necessarily great. And so having someone who's transparent, who's honest, who stands up for the little guy, right, who's not in it for quick gains, we're in it for the long haul. We're invested side by side. If we don't make any money, if you don't make any money because of the decisions we made, then we don't make any money, right? And so there's things that we've put in place, right, to say we're in this together, we do things differently. And we bring a level of sophistication that our competition, quite frankly, doesn't have. And that comes from my educational background and the corporate background that most players in our space just aren't equipped with.
What do you feel is the greatest obstacle that you had to overcome in your journey that once you learned how to move through that has attributed to the level of success that you not only obviously experienced in corporate, but now running your own company?
Biggest thing for me is slowing things down. And it's something I still struggle with today, right? What's the one thing we want to get done today, right? So I ask my team that every single day, just pick one thing. And they're like, I've got 5 things. No, one. What's the one most important thing, right? Let's distill it down. If I'm doing a training with them, right? What's the one thought that I want them to leave with? And for me, that's really hard because my mind's moving, you know, 1,000 feet per second, right? Whatever metaphor you want to use. And to be able to slow it down feels like I'm talking to, you know, a 2 or a 3-year-old. But that simplicity in being able to get there and focus on those ideas is huge, right? And it moves the organization so much faster when you slow down, which is counterintuitive. But I've seen a ton of success as a result of it.
Yeah, they always say that you got to slow down in order to speed up. So I completely get that. I'm always wanting to tackle certain things, and I sometimes just have to focus on that one thing that allows the needle to continue to move forward. So before we wind down, snapshot into the future, where do you see DML Capital going in the next 2 to 5 years with what you guys have laid out?
Yeah, so our goal is to be essentially an investment vehicle for a lot of people who don't have access or don't know about kind of these alternative investments in the real estate space. So we are working with developers and developing workforce housing, right? That goes back to our give back and being part of the community. It's the development side or the equity side of the equation. And so we'll have debt side, we'll have equity side. Any essentially real estate investment we'll be able to offer to our investors. And so we're continuing to build that out, but we do it in the right way, organically, slowly, right, to make sure that the foundation is strong, the risk mitigation is there. Again, we're not a quick hit firm, right? Like we're not looking to grow this thing massively in 1 to 2 years, right? It's a long play for us and that longevity. And so that's where we look to continue to build, mostly West Coast focus. We're up in Seattle. LA, Northern California, Portland, Utah, right? Those are some of our core markets, and continuing to grow our presence and have a meaningful impact in the communities that we operate. And that's the biggest thing for us.
Love that. Giving back is important, and it gives and drives a deeper purpose behind what we do. And that's really, really important. So, Liam, before we wind down and I get to my final question, if people want to learn more about you, DML Capital, and your podcast, where can people go to learn more?
Yeah, best way to get a hold of me is through my email. So you can reach me at liam.leonard@dmlcap, as in capital.com. So liamleonard@dmlcap.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me. If you want to look at the podcast, it's theprosperityperspective.com is where I host my podcast as well.
Awesome. And all that information will be in the description of the episode for all the listeners. So Liam, final question before we sign off. What does success truly mean to you?
To me, it's about having meaningful impact in people's lives, right? Leaving this world better than when I came in, or leaving a engagement or a conversation, right? Leaving someone with something of value. And that maybe we don't do business together, and that's fine, but how do we leave some knowledge or some enrichment with folks along the way, so that we're having this positive, optimistic influence, in others' lives, in our own lives, as we go about the world, right? So success to me looks like being able to be a hotbed or cultivator of that mindset and that feeling for everyone around, right? And my background and my success will obviously drive the financial side of that, which will enable me to do more of that, which is great. But that's just a byproduct of what success looks like.
Could not agree more. Sometimes the monetary success is a side effect from the impact that people have on those around them. And I couldn't have said it better myself. So Liam, thank you again so much for being on the podcast today. And as mentioned to the listeners, all the contact information of how to learn more about how to connect with Liam and learn about his podcast and take a listen to it will be in the description of the episode. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with, and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you everyone for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.